I mean, would I be right to say this idea of community work would have been quite kind of went against the grain, right, in those times, because there's already a social service industry and an establishment that with jobs and funds based around
Today,
that model. Mm,
today, today it goes against the grain.
mm,
Uh, Although in Singapore, very fast, right? Because there's actually a KPI, every family service center has to do community work. And yeah, so Singapore, we organize and categorize very quickly. And so everybody has to do it. But if you really do it in its real essence, I would say that it goes against the grain. And that's
mm,
the first acknowledgement. And then to ask ourselves, is it possible for this to coexist with services? And my answer actually is yes. But I think that we are still stuck in that tension. Hey, why is this going against, why is it my organization, one team does it this way, another team does it their way, and there's that kind of tension. And
mm.
the pure essence of what it actually means is never really appreciated or even executed. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm making any sense, but there's a place for community work. There's also a place
Mm.
for services. And the question is, both don't have to compete, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So Gerard, just for the sake of those who are not in social work, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between community work and social service work?
All right. Community development is
Mm,
getting people to take charge of what is important for them.
mm,
So let's say both of us now, we come together, right? And then maybe there's a third person and we are sitting around and suddenly we realize that, hey, we have this shared problem or we have this shared aspiration. And then three of us then decide, hey, what can we do together to try and meet this aspiration? Now, this is community development. Social services is like when three of us sit down and say, hey, we got this problem, and then we'll ask, what the government going to do about it? Well, ask the government. Then we're going to advocate, ask the government create a service for us. That's the difference. When you see a need, and then somebody else says, "Hey, come, I see a need. There's a market for it, and I try and provide a service. I get funding for it." But community work, we don't really need to wait for somebody to do something for us. We can do it for
mm,
ourselves.
mm.
So the
Good.
professional community worker is clear about this distinction, doesn't
Mm.
impose services, and enables people, maybe provide some resources, guidance, enable people to look after themselves.
Right, right. You said earlier that the two can coexist, right? So maybe one way would be if you want to do community work, then you go ahead and do it, but then you look and see how the government can support it. Would that be one way it can coexist?
Uh, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure because
Mm,
when you pump in money, right? You want certain things in a certain way. When you buy a shirt or you
mm,
buy something, you want something you want because you're paying. You don't
yeah.
go to a tailor or somebody you buy a shirt and then the tailor tells you, hey, yeah, not nice. I want to do it this way. You just take it. So it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? So if the government funds this work, they will have their own expectations of what is the return on the funding. But over here, if you tell people decide, then you can give space for whatever they decide. So
Are there any funding that is without strings then?
I think I think there should be more trust between the government and
Yeah.
people up there who are deciding and doing this. I think government cannot really force anything, but they can create the conditions. I mean, if they just say, okay, I take back my void deck space, I do this, there's so many barriers, then nothing can happen, right? But if they say, hey, not bad, you work in my RC, no problem. Get an RC guy, listen to you, and you don't have to listen to RC guy, but at least, keep everyone informed how the neighborhood is developing. So you can have those conversations. There can be a bit more trust among people. RC doesn't have to do everything. As long as we keep each other informed for the common good or the larger good, things like that can happen, but there's not enough trust, I think. Whenever somebody organizes something else, a lot of suspicion is whatever's going on there.
Would you say then that the establishment of the community chess, right, was
Yeah,
therefore quite a milestone in the sense of how organizations are funded, how their KPIs are measured, and what kind
it
of
was a
service they
start.
provide?
It was a start. I think it was a start. It was actually it was just economy of scale for fundraising initially. Dr. Ee was father of charity. He had to raise so many funds for so
By the
many.
way, you're not related to you, right?
No, it's not really. His son has a similar name.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, no problem. And
Mm,
yeah, but things like that, once you build organizations, they start having a life of their own. Yeah, and it becomes an industry, and yeah, over time, and a lot of practices that and even narratives from the Comchest that are not exactly helpful. So, for instance, when they started, they had a staff, and all the staff were funded by the tote board. So then they go around and say that no, for every dollar you donate, 100% goes into the charitable work, which is not true because somebody underwrote the cost for the administrators. But even if that $1 went to an organization like, let's say, Beyond Social Services, not every cent of that dollar goes to the work. Right? The organization also got overheads and all the other things. So narratives like that used for fundraising actually are quite damaging in the longer run.
mm,
So our society out there is thinking that, hey, why should I give you money? The money doesn't. Not all the money goes there, and then they start asking all sorts of different questions. Truth is, you can't run any endeavor without any overheads. So things like that.
mm, mm,
Yeah, but yeah, nobody really points all this out. I think we could as society get a lot more educated about what is the social industry. I mean, if the industry really needs to exist, then what's expected of them, and really how does such an industry actually work? Those are all questions we don't really ask, yeah,
mm,
or don't understand. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know the model or the literature for social work. I mean, what would be a better model, compared to the one that we have?
I mean, if Singapore, we started very how do you put this? Very boldly, you said, "Oh, we are not a welfare state." No?
Mm,
Many helping hands. Uh, if you okay, it sounds a bit harsh. We're not welfare state, but what does that actually mean? If you really unpack that, it means that maybe community looks out for each other. And it means that community care for their fellow citizens and there's active citizenry. It doesn't mean that there's no compassion and there's no social cohesion. Perhaps, I mean, that is something we could look at. How do you unpack what many helping hands actually mean?
mm,
But today, actually, I mean, the narrative sometimes is reported, it's repeated, but it's not true today because there's a big industry. There's actually many hired hands. And who's doing the hiring?
mm,
Government is doing the hiring. What? I mean, not directly. They create funds and schemes, and then you got to apply and whatever. But honestly, I mean, it's many hired hands. It's not helping hands. So I don't have a straightforward answer, but I think it's something that It needs to be continually adapted and thought through. I don't think there is a one size fits all thing for every context or every season. But you don't build something that's so big that you cannot dismantle. That's the problem.
So is Beyond Social Services now a family service center? Is that right?
Oh no, I'm no more in charge.
Yeah.
I can't really comment on what the direction is. But when I was in charge,
Mm.
I was really pushing, trying to make it as pure community development agency as possible. Of course, and people like us, right? What does a professional community worker actually do? Um,
Mm.
and when we get our salary, I mean, how how can we be a catalyst for community to grow rather than we ourselves doing all that servicing? So it's slightly different kind of work. I mean, there's a bit of leadership, there is a bit of community creation. What are the things I have to do to get the community to work? So I used to remind my colleagues, a community worker doesn't work for the community. The community worker gets the community to work.
Mm. Mm. Let me ask the question in a slightly different way, right? So, among the projects that you've tried when you were there at Beyond, are there instances where you see the community, the people living in Bukit Swee or elsewhere, actually coming forward actively and working together?
Of course, of
Mm.
course, of course. Yeah, that was what we lived for, right?
Mm.
And in the, I mean, I didn't have enough time to further develop it,
Mm.
but we started to look at associational life. So the work was like, okay, we have a presence, and because of our presence, people are encouraged. Then we start noticing how many self-organized groups actually emerge from the encouragement. Okay, you don't expect the self-organized groups to last years and years and years, but the point is people start taking action to help themselves. So yeah, it's a whole different way of trying to monitor your own progress. So we want to look at associations, and then we want to look at how many associations are formed, why are they being formed, how are they being maintained, and that is very much the work. And if to be very honest, is to what extent our presence actually encourage that, or maybe not at all. So,
Mm.
so and it's an ongoing thinking. How do you make yourself valuable and relevant?
I mean, in a sense, community development will work in many cases because people have needs, right? And if you show them the way, then they will find their own way to fulfill those needs together, right?
Yeah. So one universal need that you have, I have, everyone has, is the need for participation.
Mm.
There's also the need to be good at something, to understand something. So, when we go to school, I mean, for many of the kids, and even for myself, maybe, we get to listen to a lesson, and then we don't understand what the teacher is saying. Then we get very frustrated, right? Because the basic need of trying to comprehend something cannot. And if no one helps me, then I say, give up now. Or we start to say, that's damn stupid or whatever. We start to lie to ourselves and say, hey, that's not important. But the truth is, we all have a need to understand. We all have a need to participate. And we all have a need to be good at something. But if I'm bloody service, if everything I have a problem, someone tells me what to do and solves the problem for me. Actually, my own needs are not met in that sense. So community work is also tending to our universal human needs, fundamentally what each of us actually need. Instead of giving them something, and the need is something that's inside of us. It's not something that's outside us. But when we organize services, right, we say, oh, give them money, $50, 100, whatever that money, or give them food, or give them whatever. It's always something that's outside. And then the question always is, hey, why are they not satisfied? Because our satisfiers are not good enough. That's all. Because they don't meet their needs. So, so the whole basis of trying to build a more socially integrated society is really listening to people and attending to what makes them that sense of belonging, the sense of community.
Yeah, that's very true. Right. Can I ask you, what is the state of volunteerism today? You started off as a volunteer, right? So, I mean, it's been 40 years. So, how is it now? Is it more or is it less?
I think it's been corporatized.
Mm,
I, corporate social responsibility has destroyed the spirit of volunteerism. That's one of the things that has destroyed volunteerism.
mm,
I don't really know what's the meaning of volunteerism anymore. I mean, like, you get a whole agency trying to promote volunteerism with all the different corporations. Corporations give their staff one volunteering day. What does that actually mean? I mean, I it doesn't it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? I mean, you get one day off to go and volunteer. Where do you start?
mm.
Right. And where do you go? Okay, lah, go pick up rubbish at the beach, lah. Okay, fair enough. Okay. And then that day, you take a photo, you collected 10 black bags of rubbish. And when for meaningful volunteering, right, I think is really a connection with people. People then they're probably not in your usual circle. It's a way of doing something that I mean, it's different level. Even if you want to get involved with an organization, then it's maybe the best thing you can do as a volunteer is to understand what the organization is trying to do. You may not actually do anything, but you really understand what they're doing, and then you can speak about it to someone else what they're doing. I think that's more important than actually going there and trying to sweep the floor or trying to do something, work that people have to create to occupy your time. So I think volunteering really is to get interested in the rest of society, outside your whatever your social circles or your regular life. That for me is real volunteerism, taking a real interest in this place that I live in and this place I call home, trying to understand social issues a bit more. That would be great. You don't really have to go to an organization.
Mm.
Take an active interest. How the hell does our country work? Or what's not working?
I want to go back to Bukit Swee, right? When I was writing my book, so by this time, the 2000s, I was looking at the annual reports of Beyond, and it became quite clear that the profile of the estate had changed, right? I mean, people like me and my family were moved out, and a lot of the people who were now low income and having problems were not the Chinese, but the non-Chinese, the Malays and the Indians. Could you talk about some of those demographic changes in terms of the vulnerable groups?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so one, I mean, one way of explaining it could have been the policy change where
Mm,
every neighborhood had to have like a certain percentage of minority races. And let's say the district that Bukit is in, that percentage then quite conveniently met with the Chinese living in the purchase blocks and the non-Chinese living in the rental blocks because there were already, how do you
mm,
put it? The rental blocks were already existing, right?
mm,
So, one way of explaining it is how this policy is actually move things around, maybe without initially intending to, lah. But that's the result of rental blocks. Then that's one. I mean, the other thing is when you look at the rental blocks, then there's obviously the minorities also. Well, the demographics, as far as I can remember, rental blocks, about 60% or 50% are Chinese, but they are elderly. They're
Mm.
older people, either living as a couple or with someone else. And the other 40% probably other races, type of families, young who are unable to get into a purchase plot. That's where they start building their families in a rental. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but yeah.
Mm.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, with that, then there are a lot more Malays, Indians, and minority races. Um,
And you mentioned the elderly. So the another change was, Bukit Ho Swee was no longer a young estate where the problem were the kids, but now it was a graying estate, right?
yeah, it's the
Uh,
state of the funerals. I mean, you walk
mm.
around their wigs every day somewhere. Yeah.
So how did or when or how did Beyond and you in particular begin to change like the kind of projects that you were doing from the young to the older and also the non-Chinese?
I don't think Beyond was like so conscious. I mean, we just were so busy and we took
Mm.
whoever who came. And then we realized, oh, wow, so that's suddenly the people we are working with. I mean, that's, we didn't like intentionally choose to work with the minorities or whatever, but what was intentional was we wanted to serve the public rental neighborhoods, and everyone there happened to be from either Malays, Indians, or other races. Right? So it was about building the kampong to that. So the tagline for us was nurturing villages that raise their children well, because it takes a village to raise a child. So then who's nurturing, who's building that village? So community work was about building that village.
Mm.
And for many of these families, they really appreciated that narrative because they felt that they needed a lot of support of their kids. And it was very familiar when neighbors started looking after kids and coming together and all. That sense of solidarity, or in Malay word you call gotong royong or whatever, it was always there. So in a way we were activating a strength, a cultural strength that was really within them. And
Can you say a bit about these the rental flats? You mentioned the elderly Chinese. What about the non-Chinese? These were families, right? These were not
yeah,
single
yeah.
elderly singles. These were relatively young families with
Yeah, they were
children.
relatively young families with children, so
Mm.
the kids are still there. But what we did, Nayan, was that we didn't try to work so much directly with the kids, but we worked with the adults to get them to work with the kids, to look after the kids. So
Mm.
that was the difference between when I started off and what it means to be a community development agency.
So last question
Oh,
is about
really? Okay.
the it's never ending question. Sorry, the pandemic, right? How did the idea of the research projects come about?
It was common sense, right? The pandemic. One thing that we were very clear working at Beyond, we didn't want to shut down because we felt that, oh, everybody's in trouble. That's the time we should step up and not step down. So that it was very clear right from the onset. Uh, we were gearing ourselves to step up because we said, we didn't know what, but we had a sense that, hey, this is going to be big time trouble, man. I mean, this very time we had needed, this is the time. So that was the positioning we took right from
Mm.
January. Yeah, early in the January when we started getting a sense things were not right. So we created funds and trying to repurpose the funds that we already have and whatever. Just try to be as useful and reassuring as possible. Create WhatsApp groups, talk to people so that not so much misinformation goes around, that kind of thing. And finally, when it became clear, we actually proactively started a fund because we saw the government was going to give out their $600 or something. And we were saying that, hey, there are a lot of people who are wealthy enough or at least comfortable enough not to need that money. So we position ourselves to receive and redistribute that money. And, all these financial assistance schemes, they're actually opportunities to understand what in the world is actually going on. It's not just a exercise in redistribution. So at that time, we also had, out of a sense of accountability, right? We receive money and give out money. We need to know actually what we are giving to and how that is actually happening. So the guiding philosophy then was high trust because there's a pandemic. Uh, Low barriers also because there's a pandemic, but good enough governance. I mean, we cannot have such stringent governance that things go back and forth so many times and nothing really happens. So the governments have to be good enough, but not excessive. So based on these three principles, I guess the research fell under good enough governance. It was something we seized the opportunity to start something. Yeah. Well, what we found out wasn't groundbreaking or too different from what the rest of the world found out, but I think it's always good to have a local version, right? You really know what's actually going on, and based on real data, then we were up close with, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't found any other data or any other reports, right, from other agencies about,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So,
Mhm.
well done. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
Um,
we were quite fortunate. At that point in time, also before the pandemic, I had a lot of interns, right? So then started organizing. All right, guys, really have to work very hard, and so we just mobilized partners, and I think I never worked so hard. It was crazy because everyone I knew like kind of gave me a call and say, hey, how can I help? How can I help? So there were like so many people out there. And we were just trying to say, of course you can help. And then we had to figure out how to coordinate all that help. Yeah. So it was quite, I mean, I don't wish the pandemic again, but
yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point in time, I mean, it was quite encouraging. The number of people that called. No joke, I remember 7 a.m. sitting here, rivers, the phones are ringing and they don't stop till even 10, 11 p.m. at night. People are still calling. So I was exhausted, yeah. Really exhausted. But
Mm.
yeah, but we're all quite proud of what we did.
I mean, those vulnerable, you know, families and individuals, the single mothers, the low income, how are they doing? I mean, not now because you left, but before you left beyond, how are they doing after the pandemic?
After the pandemic, there was quite a bit of after effects because getting back into a job was not exactly so easy,
Mm. Mm.
and we had to prolong the assistance a little bit more for several of the families. But we kind of try to make the best of the situation. So we position the assistance not so much as financial assistance, but we said that maybe this is a type of stipend, honorarium to help us do another study. So the study then was how do we get new people 10, 20 of you to come together to work together on what to help each other get out of your own problems, so to speak. So what are your aspirations and all? And that was like a family circle. So we encourage them to save to repay their debts or whatever. They could use some of the money from the stipend to repay the debts or whatever. But we monitored that for about a year or so.
Mm.
I actually it worked. No, actually, I can't remember the stats, but they're in the report somewhere. I mean, people's debts were reduced and their savings were increased, and they were generally quite happy. So it was quite strange. I mean, whatever $50 it came, that's a stipend. But in the process, we got them to work together. That was another type of community work. So we just facilitated. I mean, we convened the meetings, brought the refreshments, and we told them every time the gender straight, we were a bit of a class went to monitor and say that time go back. So then they go back. But generally, yeah, they save money and reduce their debt.
Had Beyond carried out similar research projects before the pandemic?
Uh, Before the pandemic,
Mm.
this family circle thing, we tried because we tried, but we didn't go very far.
Mm.
It was MCCY back then had this idea. Actually, this isn't a Beyond idea. It came from Family First in America. So they brought the founder here, and the guy started talking about it, and MCCY wanted somebody to pilot it, and we volunteered because we believe in it, but it didn't go so far.
Oh.
So yeah, well, we were stuck in all that. The pandemic hit, so anyway, yeah, so it didn't go very far, but so we gave up on that, but we took the same idea and tried to implement it in our own way.
Mm. I mean, like the question I had in mind was research must be very important, right, in social work. Before you do anything, you must actually know what is happening or what is needed.
That's more like needs research.
Mm.
The type of research that I strongly advocate, and I think is very important, is actually practice research. I mean, it's a big luxury because first of all, you need people who can do the research, right? Not just the practitioners, but you need the researcher to be the practitioner, and you also need you need clarity. What are they working on and what they're trying to find out. So I say practice research because that's the
Mm.
way that the practice can actually deepen, evolve, and change for the better. Otherwise, it's all this way of evaluation, right? You give me a target, a metric, and then end of the 6 months or whatever period, I'm supposed to hit it. It doesn't make sense, because life is not like that. So
Mm.
you're not dealing with the constants that have a predictable outcome.
Right.
So this is the way we learn. Actually, technique building must be the way of social work or any practice for that matter. Yeah, and yeah, this is what I strongly advocate. Like practice research. We have to
Sorry. So can you explain what is that practice research?
practice research is being able to do your practice,
Mm.
but to have the confidence and I would say humility for somebody to journey review, a researcher to journey review to see that what the hell are you doing? Are you
Mm.
are you doing what you say you'll do, and what are some of the outcomes of what you have done? And so from there, very periodically and very regularly, you actually look at your own efforts and say, hey, is this actually moving the right direction? Or what have we learned so far? And then we can iterate and move and move and move step by step. But a lot of research is like, the evaluation is like, okay, I want you to hit this target, and then you don't hit the target, your program is lousy. It's not true because in this whole period, you are learning so many other things because maybe in the first place that target wasn't so important anyway. So So people always treat this as an examination, as a test. Evaluation is not examination or test. It's about building the practice and about honoring the integrity of the practice. And to do that, you have to allow people to look at your work and critique it, and where we are not moving, put our hands up and we adjust.
Mm.
And that's the only way real growth actually happens. Not all this, all this arbitrary tests are.
Finally, right? So, what advice would you give to the new social worker?
Oh goodness, there has to be some context, doesn't it? I mean, but
Mm.
I can only say that there's, I mean, we need the money, so it's a job. And now it probably can be a career. But really, what's most important is, do you really feel that this is the vocation for you? I mean, to really do this? It must be more job in a career. Otherwise, it's quite, we don't quite incongruent. So I think the advice is we have to be ourselves, and it's okay, if we don't like to do this. That's not a crime, no big scene. No, get out. I think it's even more cause more problems if we don't want to do this and we hang on. It's not everybody's cup of tea, so don't drink.
I mean, the social worker is still important in the whole scheme of things. I mean, it is an industry now, but the individual worker is still important, right? It's still key.
If you are just a technician in the industry, then I reserve my comment. But if you really believe that you have a role to try and create some sort of change or be in support of people's efforts, then yes, it's very important. But when you build industry, we end up being just a technician in the whole big system. Yeah.
Mm. What would you be doing in the days to come?
What am I doing the days to come?
Mm.
I'm trying to finish. Actually, I wanted to finish today my
Uh,
first draft. So I used to write this thing every week, right? So I'm working with a friend and putting together some of these letters that I used to write every week. And but this time it's not just the letters, adding some commentary, because my friend would ask me why did I write this letter, and also provide some context and commentary. I don't know. This has been in the works for a couple of years. We just keep getting distracted.
mm. Oh, so
This
it's a
morning,
kind of memoir or collection of
no,
writings?
no, it's like these questions you're asking me now. Why
Right.
social providers and things like that. I'm not really not sure. It's nothing personal in that sense. So it's not.
Mm.
Um, there was another week beyond. It was a weekly newsletter that I used to write
Mm.
without fail. I wrote it for 18 years. So a friend just picks up she picked up the letters that stood out to her, spoke to her, and started asking questions. Yeah, it's been a long journey. I hope to finish it before the end of the first draft, and yeah, and then
That's
start editing again.
that's good. It's close to finishing. Yeah. So we would see it by the end of the year.
I don't know. I would like to see it as soon as possible. Then, yeah.
Great, great. I love to see it too. Yeah.
All right, it
Thank.
was good catching you. Maybe see you in 17 years.
That would be far too long. I think I'll prefer to do it sooner. But thank you very much, Gerard. I really enjoyed, not just going back to Bukit Swee the days in the estate, but also thinking about some of the issues that happened across the history of the social work sector. You know, the question is still very much open ended, um, and I think there is a point to be made to learn from the what has happened and to learn from the past and to learn from veterans like you.
Yeah, I mean, happy to talk to you. We can talk again, and I'll let you know if the book ever comes out.
I'm sure you will. You are very keen to have it out.
Yeah.
Thanks a
Okay.
lot, Gerard. I'll let you know when the podcast comes out, which will be in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot, all right? Yeah.
Okay, welcome.
Talk to
Bye-bye.
you again. Bye.